Have you ever wondered how a single compound found in broccoli sprouts could influence cancer risk, brain function, heart health, aging, detoxification, and even overall lifespan? At first, that sounds like nutritional hype. After all, we're constantly told that one supplement or one superfood is the answer to everything. Most of those claims don't hold up under scientific scrutiny. But sulforaphane is different. Over the last 2 decades, researchers have published hundreds of studies investigating this naturally occurring compound found in cruciferous vegetables such as broccoli, broccoli sprouts, kale, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and cauliflower. What makes sulforaphane so fascinating isn't that it targets one disease. It's that it appears to activate some of the body's most fundamental defense systems, systems that help protect cells from oxidative stress, inflammation, toxins, DNA damage, and accelerated aging. And here's why this matters. Most chronic diseases don't suddenly appear overnight. Cancer, heart disease, neurodegeneration, metabolic dysfunction, and accelerated aging often develop over years or even decades. Long before symptoms show up, the body begins accumulating damage from chronic inflammation, environmental toxins, poor diet, insulin resistance, mitochondrial dysfunction, and oxidative stress. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Imagine your cells as a city. Every day, that city produces waste, encounters pollution, experiences wear and tear, and faces potential threats. To stay healthy, it needs a powerful cleanup crew, repair team, and emergency response system. One of the master switches controlling those protective systems is a pathway called NRF2. Sulforaphane is considered one of the most potent natural activators of that pathway ever discovered. When activated, NRF2 helps turn on hundreds of genes involved in antioxidant defense, detoxification, cellular repair, and resilience against stress. What the research shows is that this single mechanism may explain why sulforaphane has been studied in areas ranging from cancer prevention and healthy aging to cardiovascular protection, brain health, metabolic health, and longevity. In today's video, we're going to separate evidence from hype. You'll learn how sulforaphane works, why broccoli sprouts contain extraordinarily high amounts of it, what the latest research says about cancer and mortality, how it may influence brain performance and healthy aging, and most importantly, how to use this information in a practical way that supports long-term health. We'll also discuss the limitations of the research because true science isn't about selling miracles, it's about understanding mechanisms, applying evidence intelligently, and making better decisions for your body. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why many longevity researchers, functional medicine practitioners, and nutrition scientists consider sulforaphane one of the most promising compounds found in food. If you're interested in evidence-based strategies for improving metabolic health, increasing energy, reducing disease risk, and supporting healthy aging naturally, consider subscribing. We dive into the science and turn it into practical tools you can use every day. Let's start by looking at the 6 most important things everyone should know about sulforaphane. Most people think antioxidants work by directly neutralizing free radicals. That's only part of the story. The real breakthrough happens when your body starts producing its own internal defense systems. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every second, your cells are generating energy. And whenever energy is produced, small amounts of oxidative stress are created as a byproduct. Think of it like a fireplace. The fire gives you heat and energy, but it also creates smoke. If the smoke becomes excessive and isn't cleared away, damage begins to accumulate. The same thing happens inside your cells. Oxidative stress can damage proteins, fats, mitochondria, and even DNA. Over time, this damage contributes to aging, cardiovascular disease, neurodegeneration, insulin resistance, and cancer development. This is where sulforaphane becomes unique. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine every cell in your body has a hidden emergency control room. Inside that control room is a master switch called NRF2. Under normal circumstances, that switch remains mostly inactive. But when sulforaphane enters the body, it helps release NRF2 and allows it to move into the cell nucleus, where it activates hundreds of protective genes. Instead of acting like a single firefighter putting out one small fire, sulforaphane activates an entire fire department. Research has shown that NRF2 regulates genes involved in antioxidant production, detoxification enzymes, glutathione synthesis, cellular repair, mitochondrial protection, and inflammatory control. In fact, many scientists now consider NRF2 one of the most important longevity pathways identified in human biology. Recent reviews continue to highlight sulforaphane as one of the strongest naturally occurring activators of this pathway. International Journal of Molecular Sciences, 2025. What makes this especially important is that modern life constantly challenges these protective systems. Environmental pollutants, ultra-processed foods, chronic psychological stress, poor sleep, excess body fat, high blood sugar, insulin resistance, All of these increase oxidative stress and inflammatory signaling throughout the body. The problem isn't that these stressors exist. The problem is when the body's repair systems can no longer keep up with the damage. Sulforaphane appears to strengthen those repair systems. Several studies have demonstrated increased glutathione activity following sulforaphane exposure. Glutathione is often called the body's master antioxidant because it plays a central role in detoxification and cellular protection. Rather than supplying antioxidants from the outside, sulforaphane helps the body manufacture more of its own internal defenses. This distinction is critical. Many supplements attempt to fight oxidative stress directly. Sulforaphane teaches the body to become more resilient. That's a completely different strategy. It's similar to the difference between giving someone fish for a day versus teaching them how to fish for life. And when we look at aging, cancer prevention, cardiovascular protection, and brain health, resilience may be one of the most important biological advantages we can build. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Every week, we break down complex health science into practical, evidence-based strategies that help you work with your biology instead of against it. Now that we understand the master switch sulforaphane activates, the next question becomes even more interesting. How does activating this pathway affect cancer risk and long-term survival? Cancer is often viewed as something that appears suddenly. One day you're healthy and the next day you're diagnosed. But biologically, that's rarely how it works. Cancer is usually the result of years, sometimes decades, of accumulated cellular damage, genetic mutations, chronic inflammation, impaired detoxification, and failures in the body's ability to identify and eliminate abnormal cells. This is why researchers have become so interested in sulforaphane, not because it is a treatment for cancer, but because it appears to influence several of the biological processes that contribute to cancer development in the first place. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every day, your cells encounter substances that can damage DNA. These may come from pollution, cigarette smoke, processed foods, excessive alcohol, environmental chemicals, or even normal metabolic activity. Fortunately, your body has built-in systems designed to neutralize these threats and repair damage before it becomes dangerous. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your DNA as the blueprint for a skyscraper. Every day, small errors appear in the plans. Most are quickly corrected by a maintenance crew. But if enough errors accumulate and the repair crew becomes overwhelmed, structural problems begin to emerge. Cancer can be thought of as the result of too many unrepaired errors. Sulforaphane appears to strengthen several layers of that maintenance system. Research has shown that sulforaphane can increase the activity of phase 2 detoxification enzymes, support glutathione production, reduce oxidative stress, and influence pathways involved in cell cycle regulation and programmed cell death, also known as apoptosis. In simple terms, it may help the body identify damaged cells and remove them before they become a larger problem. Multiple human and laboratory studies have also found that sulforaphane may help protect against DNA damage and reduce exposure to certain carcinogens by enhancing the body's natural detoxification pathways. Recent reviews continue to identify sulforaphane as one of the most extensively studied dietary compounds for cancer prevention research. What's especially interesting is that population studies consistently show that people who consume higher amounts of cruciferous vegetables tend to have lower rates of several cancers, including cancers of the digestive tract, lung, breast, and prostate. While these studies cannot prove cause and effect, they point toward a meaningful relationship that researchers continue to investigate. But cancer isn't the only outcome researchers are examining. A growing body of evidence suggests that many of the same mechanisms involved in cancer prevention, reduced inflammation, improved detoxification, better mitochondrial function, and stronger antioxidant defenses, are also associated with lower all-cause mortality. In other words, the biological systems that help protect against cancer may also contribute to living longer and aging more successfully. So what can you do practically? One of the most effective food sources of sulforaphane is broccoli sprouts. Gram for gram, broccoli sprouts can contain dramatically higher concentrations of glucoraphanin, the precursor that eventually becomes sulforaphane, than mature broccoli. A practical strategy is to consume fresh broccoli sprouts several times per week, ideally alongside foods rich in the enzyme myrosinase, which helps convert glucoraphanin into active sulforaphane. Raw broccoli sprouts naturally contain this enzyme, as do foods such as mustard seeds, radishes, arugula, and daikon radish. The bigger lesson here is that cancer prevention isn't about finding a miracle food. It's about creating an internal environment that supports repair, detoxification, and cellular resilience year after year. And that brings us to another area where cellular resilience may be incredibly important: the brain. because some of the most exciting sulforaphane research isn't happening in cancer laboratories, it's happening in neuroscience. When most people think about protecting their brain, they focus on crossword puzzles, memory games, or learning new skills. Those activities can certainly help. But one of the biggest drivers of cognitive decline may be something far less obvious: chronic inflammation and oxidative stress inside the brain itself. In fact, many researchers now believe that neuroinflammation is one of the common threads connecting age-related cognitive decline, neurodegenerative diseases, mood disorders, and even certain behavioral conditions. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your brain consumes an enormous amount of energy. Despite making up only about 2% of your body weight, it uses roughly 20% of your daily energy production. That makes it one of the most metabolically active organs in the body. And where there's high energy production, there's also the potential for high oxidative stress. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your brain as the control center of a massive city. Every second, billions of messages are being sent, received, processed, and coordinated. To keep everything running smoothly, the control center requires a constant supply of energy, maintenance crews, and protection against damage. When inflammation rises and oxidative stress accumulates, communication becomes less efficient. Signals become noisy, repairs slow down, performance begins to suffer. This is one reason sulforaphane has attracted so much attention in neuroscience research. Because sulforaphane can cross the blood-brain barrier and activate NRF2 within brain tissue, researchers have investigated whether it can help strengthen the brain's own protective systems. Experimental studies suggest sulforaphane may reduce neuroinflammatory signaling, support mitochondrial function, improve antioxidant defenses, and protect neurons from oxidative injury. What the research shows is that these mechanisms may have implications for healthy aging, cognitive performance, mood regulation, and resilience against neurological stressors. Researchers have also explored sulforaphane in conditions involving behavior and social functioning. Some early human studies generated significant interest after observing improvements in certain behavioral measures among individuals with autism spectrum disorder. While these findings are promising, scientists emphasize that larger and longer-term studies are still needed before firm conclusions can be drawn. Perhaps the most exciting implication is what this means for everyday brain health. Modern lifestyles expose the brain to constant challenges: poor sleep, chronic stress, blood sugar instability, ultra-processed foods, environmental toxins, excessive inflammation. Each of these can contribute to oxidative stress and reduced cognitive resilience over time. Sulforaphane isn't a substitute for healthy habits, but it may help reinforce the biological systems that allow the brain to better adapt to these challenges. Here's a practical protocol. Focus first on the foundations. Prioritize 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep. Maintain stable blood sugar through adequate protein and minimally processed foods. Exercise consistently, particularly aerobic and resistance training. Then consider adding broccoli sprouts several times per week as part of a brain-supportive nutrition strategy. For individuals using supplements, products standardized for active sulforaphane production and paired with myrosinase tend to be more effective than products containing glucoraphanin alone. However, food should remain the foundation whenever possible. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. Every day we explore the science behind metabolism, longevity, brain performance, and natural health strategies that actually work in the real world. Now let's move from the brain to another organ system that determines how long and how well we live: the cardiovascular system. Because what protects your cells often protects your arteries as well. Heart disease remains the leading cause of death worldwide, and despite decades of public health campaigns, many people still misunderstand what actually drives cardiovascular disease. Most assume the problem begins when cholesterol becomes elevated, but that's only part of the picture. From a functional medicine perspective, heart disease is often the result of years of accumulated damage to the blood vessels themselves. Chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, insulin resistance, elevated blood sugar, high blood pressure, and metabolic dysfunction gradually injure the delicate lining of the arteries. By the time symptoms appear, the process may have been developing for decades. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Your blood vessels are lined with a thin layer of cells called the endothelium. Think of this lining as the Teflon coating inside a healthy pipe. When the endothelium is functioning properly, blood flows smoothly, arteries remain flexible, and the risk of plaque formation stays relatively low. But when oxidative stress and inflammation repeatedly damage this lining, the environment inside the artery begins to change. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine a brand new highway. Traffic moves efficiently because the road surface is smooth and well maintained. Now imagine years of neglect, potholes, debris, and structural damage. Traffic slows, accidents increase, and congestion develops. A similar process can occur inside blood vessels. Researchers have become interested in sulforaphane because many of the same protective pathways involved in cancer prevention and brain health also affect cardiovascular function. Activation of NRF2 helps increase antioxidant defenses, reduce inflammatory signaling, improve cellular stress resistance, and protect endothelial cells from oxidative injury. Laboratory and animal studies consistently show improvements in vascular function when these pathways are activated. What the research shows is that sulforaphane may help reduce some of the biological drivers that contribute to atherosclerosis, the gradual buildup of plaque within arteries. Studies have also demonstrated potential benefits for blood vessel function, oxidative stress reduction, and protection against inflammatory damage within the cardiovascular system. But perhaps the most important connection involves metabolic health. Many people don't realize that insulin resistance is one of the strongest contributors to cardiovascular disease. When insulin remains chronically elevated, inflammation increases, blood vessels become more vulnerable to injury, blood pressure often rises, and the conditions that favor plaque formation begin to develop. This means that sulforaphane works best when viewed as part of a larger strategy, not a magic bullet. A multiplier, a compound that may enhance the body's protective systems while you simultaneously address the root causes of cardiovascular dysfunction. A practical heart health protocol might include consuming broccoli sprouts 3 to 5 times per week, building meals around protein, vegetables, and healthy fats, reducing ultra-processed foods and excess sugar, walking after meals to improve glucose control, resistance training at least 2 to 3 times weekly, prioritizing sleep and stress management to lower inflammatory burden. Notice the pattern. Every major benefit we've discussed so far, whether it's cancer prevention, brain protection, or cardiovascular health, comes back to the same core theme: reduce chronic inflammation, improve cellular resilience, strengthen the body's natural defense systems. And nowhere is that theme more important than in the aging process itself, because aging isn't simply about getting older, it's about how well your cells adapt to stress over time. One of the biggest misconceptions about aging is that it's simply the passage of time, but biologically, aging is much more than counting birthdays. Two people can be the exact same age chronologically and yet have dramatically different levels of health, energy, cognitive function, and disease risk. Why? Because aging is largely influenced by what happens inside our cells. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Every day, your cells are exposed to stress. Some of that stress is beneficial. Exercise, fasting, temperature exposure, and physical activity all challenge the body in ways that make it stronger. But excessive stress without adequate recovery creates damage. Over time, this damage can accumulate in the form of mitochondrial dysfunction, chronic inflammation, impaired cellular repair, DNA damage, and declining metabolic flexibility. These are some of the fundamental hallmarks of biological aging. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your body as a house that is constantly being lived in. Every day there is wear and tear, paint fades, pipes age, floors become worn, small repairs are needed. If maintenance crews are active and repairs happen quickly, the house remains strong for decades. But if repairs slow down while damage continues accumulating, deterioration accelerates. This is exactly how aging works at the cellular level. Researchers are increasingly interested in sulforaphane because it appears to influence several pathways associated with healthy aging simultaneously. One of the most important involves mitochondria. Mitochondria are often called the power plants of the cell because they generate the energy required for virtually every biological process. Unfortunately, mitochondria are also highly vulnerable to oxidative stress. As mitochondrial function declines, energy production becomes less efficient, fatigue increases, recovery slows, inflammation rises, the aging process accelerates. Studies suggest that sulforaphane may help support mitochondrial health by activating NRF2, increasing antioxidant defenses, improving cellular stress resistance, and enhancing the body's ability to manage oxidative damage. What the research shows is that many longevity-promoting interventions share a common feature: they increase resilience. Exercise does this. Intermittent fasting does this. Quality sleep does this. And sulforaphane appears to operate through a similar principle. Instead of shielding cells from every challenge, it helps cells become better prepared to handle stress. Scientists refer to this concept as hormesis. A small beneficial stress triggers adaptive responses that make the organism stronger. This may explain why sulforaphane is generating significant interest within the longevity research community, not because it stops aging, but because it may help slow some of the biological processes that drive aging. Now let's talk practical application. If your goal is healthy aging, think in terms of stacking longevity signals. Start the day with a protein-rich breakfast or maintain a structured fasting routine if appropriate for your health status. Engage in resistance training several times per week. Walk daily. Prioritize deep sleep. Manage stress effectively. Eat cruciferous vegetables regularly, with broccoli sprouts serving as a concentrated source of sulforaphane precursors. When combined, these habits create a powerful environment for cellular repair and resilience. And that's an important point. No single food creates longevity. Longevity emerges when multiple biological systems work together. Sulforaphane may be one of the tools that help strengthen those systems. But to maximize its benefits, we need to understand something most people completely overlook: how sulforaphane is actually created in food and why many people unknowingly destroy most of it before it ever reaches their cells. This may be the most practical section of the entire video, because knowing that sulforaphane is beneficial is one thing. Actually getting meaningful amounts into your body is something completely different. And this is where most people unknowingly make a mistake. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Sulforaphane is not present in large amounts in broccoli itself. Instead, broccoli contains a precursor compound called glucoraphanin. To convert glucoraphanin into active sulforaphane, you need an enzyme called myrosinase. Think of glucoraphanin as the raw ingredients and myrosinase as the chef. Without the chef, the meal never gets prepared. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine buying all the ingredients needed to bake a cake. You have flour, eggs, milk, and sugar sitting on the kitchen counter. But unless someone actually combines and bakes those ingredients, you don't get a cake. The same principle applies here. Without adequate myrosinase activity, much of the potential sulforaphane never forms. This becomes important because heat can deactivate myrosinase. Many people consume overcooked broccoli and assume they're receiving the full benefit. In reality, prolonged boiling or excessive cooking can substantially reduce sulforaphane formation. What the research shows is that broccoli sprouts are among the richest known dietary sources of glucoraphanin. Some studies have found concentrations many times higher than those found in mature broccoli. That's why broccoli sprouts have become a favorite among longevity researchers and functional medicine practitioners. So how can you maximize sulforaphane production? Here is a simple evidence-based protocol. First, aim to consume broccoli sprouts several times per week. Many people use approximately 1/2 to 1 cup of fresh sprouts daily. Second, if you're eating cooked cruciferous vegetables, add a source of active myrosinase after cooking. Excellent options include mustard powder, mustard seeds, radishes, daikon radish, arugula, watercress, or raw broccoli sprouts. A practical example would be lightly steaming broccoli and then sprinkling mustard powder on top before eating. Third, avoid excessive cooking times. Light steaming generally preserves more sulforaphane producing potential than prolonged boiling. Fourth, if using supplements, look for products that either provide stabilized sulforaphane or include active myrosinase to improve conversion efficiency. But remember this, the goal isn't to obsess over one compound. The goal is to build a nutrition pattern that consistently activates the body's natural repair systems. Broccoli sprouts are powerful, but they're even more powerful when combined with adequate protein, regular exercise, quality sleep, stress management, blood sugar control, and a diet rich in whole foods. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, that's really the story of sulforaphane. It's not a miracle molecule. It's a signal that tells your cells to strengthen their defenses, improve their repair mechanisms, and become more resilient against the stresses of modern life. And that brings us to the most important question of all: what should you take away from everything we've discussed today?